Alright, I'm going to do a quick demo on drawing a sequined or beaded fabric, and we're going to use the fabric over here from Mood. This is a sheer fabric that then has some beaded and sequins along the top. I'm just going to quickly sketch in my form, and I'm actually going to end up drawing this in micron pen. So I'm just going to quickly get in kind of my dress form shape. And then quickly just the shape of the fabric draped. When you're choosing a more complicated fabric, it is probably wise to go ahead and choose a less complicated drape if you have that available to you, so we don't need to be trying to get all the ruffles in there. I'm just gonna try to kind of have the shape of this fabric come back across, bring that in, and do like that. Okay, and then kind of goes across here. Alright, that's enough of the form to get me started. It's super, super light here. You too. Try to get it just a little bit darker so that you can see. But I've just given myself just a few lines so that I can come back in with my micron pen and start paying attention to the texture on the surface. One thing to consider is whether or not you want to go in and sketch out all of the little details first. That might be helpful. So if I came in and I was like, I know that there's a flower here and kind of has these larger shapes, and I'm going to simplify a lot just because in a drawing this size I can't possibly communicate every little detail in here, or it's going to be super overwhelming. So I'm just going to try to communicate the main shapes and sketch in some major landmarks. And once I do that, I can start working on the actual beading. I'm going to do that. I'm going to start with the bigger details, and I'm going to put them in using a thicker micron pen. And I'm just trying to capture some of the texture of the embroidery on top. And then I'm also trying to pay attention to leave some of these shapes open so that I can do the little leaves that have beads in them. I'm not trying to fill in all the space with black, even though it is a black fabric. I'm trying to leave enough of the white of my fabric or of my paper showing through that I have room for indicating the shine that is off of the sequins and beads. I'm also trying not to overcrowd it so that you can still make out the actual motif of what's there. So sometimes I'm just going to put in a line and then kind of do these little curvy marks to meet it. And that's just indicating more or less the beaded shapes. But there's like a rounded bead. But if you try to do too much detail, it will be mind-numbing, not just for you drawing it, but for the person looking at it. Let's see. One thing to pay attention to is anytime that the edge of the fabric has something sticking off of it, you'll want to pay attention to that, because that interrupts the flow of a line, and so that will be really noticeable. So as the fabric comes down, there's little edges of the applique and things sticking off. There's some of these darker flowers, which are like almost a jet black, to contrast with the more open areas. And we'll just continue across, building up the big shapes first, remembering that anytime it folds, it's going to hide part of the design, so you will get like cut off shapes that maybe seem like, oh, they don't make a lot of sense. There's a little bit more dense over here. A few more of these. So I'm just kind of sketching this in, and let's say I wanted to have an area where I had some sequins. I could use either doing these little kind of sequin shapes and keeping some of them really dark, leaving some open to be white so that it kind of has that shine. Some of them can be almost filled in completely, while other ones could be partially filled in or completely open. It's good to have an occasional one where it's like a complete circle with a dot in the middle that can fill it in. Maybe I'll put in some more of these kind of petally shapes, some more vines. But as this gets more dense, I'm more trying to get the effect of the fabric than what's actually, every little line that's actually there. So how dense is it? What are some of the shapes that I can still make out? Can I still make out any of the shapes? Or does it become just kind of a swirling mass of lines? Are there any places where really what I can see is an outline and then just some shine? Using a stipple to indicate some shine coming off of the fabric. Good way to fill up some space. And remember, I can come back in and make any of these outlines of, say, my folds darker. I can always come in and add hatching to add my shading, especially on a woven mesh like this. I think actually like a mix of the hatching plus the stippling could give a really nice effect. So if I then come in on top of it and stipple in a few places, and then make sure that the edge maybe has a texture to it, similar to the leaves or the petals. And then I could also come in with a gel pen at the end, add back in any highlights, any like little crisscross shapes for like a little shine. That one's done in black, but it could be in white. Continue just filling in all of the little shapes. And like I said, it's a complex fabric, so it'll take some time. But you get a really beautiful rendered shape at the end. The stippling helped me communicate any shadow here or the overlap. Over here, it's, you know, a lot less, lot less layered, so there is more opacity. So I could just put the stipple in for the few places it does overlap. Follow that. And then the fact that I can see the form through. And then probably once I get about this density all over, I'll want to switch to a finer point. See if I have a fine micron available here. And come back in to do any hatching I want for that net. Don't have to do it everywhere. And to avoid it looking patchy, I might fill in some of the more open areas with the leaves. Or an extra flower shape. So I can come in. Keeping my curvature line of the fabric here. But anywhere where there's just a single layer, keeping those lines finer helps with that as well. There's a lot more open layers as it goes across this, where there's like less applique layered on. It's more dense at this edge, continues across here. Here, there's some open layers, so I can sketch those in ahead of time, plan out my big shapes. And I can go back and forth, that way my hand doesn't get tired. And just continuing along this way. So, you know, anywhere it's going to be in shadow. Just overlapping these lines and building up density. And adding in these little leaf shapes. And just continuing on, so on and so forth, until you've covered your fabric. And like I said, you can take a white gel point or gel pen and come back in and try to add some of that shine. You want to make sure it's really dry, so this might not quite be dry enough yet. But adding in like these little X shapes or little dots. To add in some shine. Can work well too. If you have your brush pen, you could use that to do some more of your stippling shapes. So like I said, it's about drawing the effect, not actually every single detail that's on there. And if this was me, I would actually probably come in afterwards. And I'm not really a purist when it comes to, oh, it's a pen and pencil drawing or it's ink. I would probably come in and still add in my, just like a little bit of my shading. Doing that after, though, saves a little bit of the wear on your micron. So then I can grab my blending stump and say, okay, make that nice and blended in. That way I have a nice even gray to represent that this is not like a black and white fabric. It is all black. A gray tone marker could do the same thing. But building up that little gray, that will make any white highlights that you leave or come back and put in with your eraser pop even more against your page. Yeah, so you know, you have to decide where is the line between communicating how dense this all is and actually not overwhelming the eye. And part of that can be toned down by adding in that graphite shading afterwards. That way you're also getting just those tonal values in. Alright, well I'm going to end that demo there. And that is my demo for like a sequined beaded fabric. So I've just tried to leave in some of those highlights, some areas of dark, and communicate some of the shapes.